The case in Washington, D.C., the election interference case brought by Jack Smith, that he had to, again, issue and refile a superseding indictment after that Supreme Court case granting a lot of immunity to President Trump. So people were kind of watching to see how would he change it. Of course, a couple of the changes he made were really just kind of ridiculous. Like instead of calling him President Trump, they referred to him in this case now as candidate Trump to try and, again, distract from the fact that he was president at the time they are trying to bring these acts occurred. Of course, there were some charges they had to drop completely, but if you actually look at the charges they brought, two of which in a different Supreme Court case that we filed in were tossed out by the Supreme Court as charges that would not be relevant in these cases, even to those who entered the Capitol illegally on January 6th, remain in this case. And then, of course, they're explaining today kind of a timeline. The judge says she will totally, this is Judge Chutkan in D.C., is trying to totally ignore the election. But here's the issue. There's issues within this because, for instance, the discussions with Vice President Pence, is that part of his official, job as president? Seems like it, because when you talk to your vice president and your president, even if you disagree with each other, that would appear to be official actions. Well, who gets to decide if that's official or not, and thus could be used in court against President Trump or is covered by immunity? Well, of course, President Trump's attorneys asserted, this was made pretty clear by the Supreme Court, that would be covered already, that he'd be immune from that. You have to toss that communication out. Judge Chutkan said the Supreme Court says she gets to make the decision on whether or not there's immunity there. So that issue alone is ripe for appeal to go to the D.C. Court of Appeals, then ultimately, likely, I see another trip potentially to the U.S. Supreme Court. So what does it mean for the timeline? Well, it's interesting, Will, because she said, I don't care about the elections. I'm not considering the elections at all. President Trump, by the way, he pled not guilty to all of the charges, all of the counts. It was a pretty simple. He did not have to be in the courtroom today. And of course, there's not cameras allowed in federal court. So these are reports coming in from a journalist as they come about. We don't have a timeline set from her about this case. So we'll see if her timeline is as bold as her statements were. Like, does she actually try to start a timeline in the middle of, less than 2 months before a presidential election? We got the debate next week. We're 5 days away from that. But she has said, Will, I am ignoring the election, and I am the arbiter on whether or not immunity stands. That's right. And as you mentioned, there aren't cameras in the federal courthouse. So these are quotes that we're getting from journalists that are inside there for these proceedings today. But Judge Chutkan said this court is not concerned with the electoral schedule. That is not something I'm going to consider. I'm definitely not getting dragged into the election. So the fact that we already brought up that it appears Jack Smith was violating Department of Justice regulations and guidance already with bringing the superseding indictment at the time he did. Now we know that the judge in this case is not going to even consider that in her scheduling. Once again, it appears more election interference from the DOJ. And this is the day after we see them have the attorney general parade out there complaining about what? Russian interference in the election. Norm, on line one from Washington, D.C., you're on the air.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, I just want to know, is there an opportunity for President Trump, should he get elected, to have a righteous retribution, not a vindictive, but a righteous retribution against the classified documents, Merrick Garland, Jack Smith, to investigate these people, to show that there was an abuse of power, and then do something about it?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think it would be better just to start firing people, honestly. A lot of them will lose their jobs, but get rid of them, then just try to start, criminal convictions. You see how long that could take. And again, there won't be a lot of, most people, they're worried about their pocketbook. They're worried about wars going on. But so what you need to do, if you're President Trump, you come into office, you've got to drain the swamp. It starts with the top. You get rid of these bad actors, and then you get rid of their associates. And you've got to do everything possible, including working with Congress, to make it easier to remove some of these bureaucrats. You put political appointees in that are going to get this job done and help you and assist you, not try and thwart you in this process.